Number 10, Friendly Fire. Oh boy, this is just, I don't know, it's just silly. It's less WTF admittedly and more just like, why though? So if you end up getting the Phaser Blaster, you can stun animatronics that are chasing you by shooting them in the eyes. This temporarily blinds them. That all makes sense to me. The other item you can get, the Phas camera, works in a similar way with its flash. Also, that makes sense. And yet, you can also use this to stun your friend Glamrock Freddy. Why would you ever want to do that? Why is that even possible? Why is that even an option? Just how sadistic is Gregory? These are all the questions I'm left to ask myself, and unfortunately you, who chose to watch this video, this shouldn't even be an option in the game, and yet hey, it is. You can do it. Just because Gregory is probably kind of partly a jerk all the time. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Gaming, make sure you show us that you love us and that you want more FNAF content by hitting that like. Number 9, Traveling Around in Glamrock Freddy. Why is this weird to me? I mean, it's cool, but why is it weird? Well, because it really doesn't seem like there is enough room inside Freddy for you as Gregory to fit. And I still stand by this observation today. I've honestly been saying it since the release of this game, when we got to see the chest cavity and also get a sense for, you know, our own size as Gregory in the game. It just doesn't add up to me. And the claustrophobic side of myself kind of feels like, as cool as it is to move around more safely in Freddy and also in essence pilot him, that is cool, I personally would never want to climb inside of his chest, no matter how small or how big it was. That just seems like, no thank you. And definitely not if it is things like Phas Watch also in there that I gotta share space with. That part where it appears that you get out still confuses me. Did the Phas Watch only appear like after, like moving up inside Freddy from another part of him, like a limb or something? Or was it there the whole time? If it was there the whole time, there's really no room. It really doesn't make sense. Number 8, What's in the Vent? One of the most actually terrifying moments comes from the Music Man who chases us in the vent. But also, I have some questions about this. Where did this Music Man come from? Why is he in the vent? Why is there a small and giant Music Man in this game? Is this little Music Man part of DJ Music Man's army? Like, does he have a bunch of them? That sounds horrifying. And still, why is he in the vent? The sequence where you are chased by the little Music Man through the vent feels somehow even more terrifying than being chased by a regular size animatronic, even though that should feel more threatening. And yet it also feels like a weird choice in terms of the narrative, but I guess in terms of creating a horrifying moment, the developers did succeed here, which is probably why Music Man is in the vent to begin with. But I don't know, maybe that's also his dressing room? After all, you know, the main stage animatronics all get dressing rooms, so I mean, do the other animatronics get dressing rooms? Do the wet floor signs, do they have a room they gotta go to? They should at least get like a green room or something where they can just like chill and hang out, or a break room, you know? Number 7, Mega DJ Music Man. I can't believe this really happened in the game. Also, if we're talking about animatronics getting their own dressing rooms, like DJ Music Man would need like such a big dressing room. He's such a big animatronic. A giant Music Man. That was real life in this game. I was so convinced when we got our first look at the trailer that Music Man, the giant Music Man that we saw, was going to be some kind of like delusional moment. Like, we'd simply imagine that Music Man was bigger than he was, we'd hallucinate it, and honestly, when I found out about the Sleepy Time candy, that honestly seemed even more plausible. I was like, oh boy, Sleepy Time candy, whoo! But no, giant DJ Music Man is a real thing, and apparently he is usually a super nice guy, according to Glamrock Freddy. Super nice guy. However, in the game, he doesn't seem so nice when he's chasing you and your heart is thumping and you're literally running for your life. Yeah, DJ Music Man from Security Breach is still something that will haunt my nightmares today. It honestly kind of makes me wish he was some kind of hallucination or dream sequence in the game. I don't know, that would be more easy to accept, other than like, that's real life. That's horrifying. Number 6, ending the game early. I think one of the weirdest things that's built into this game is the ending the game early option. Like, the fact that we get that option, that's weird to me. That's just, it's an interesting thing to build in, and I don't fully understand really why they did. Like, I get having multiple different endings, because that's cool, but giving you even the option to leave at 6 AM and just like end the game when there is so much more to do in this game, and the game would be so short if you just stopped playing entirely there. I don't know, why is that an option? Did they add it in because they wanted people to have an out if they were too scared? And the real question, did anyone actually like full stop playing there? Let me know if you did, because I bet some people did do that, and those people would have drastically missed out, or did drastically miss out. That's why I don't even think the option should be available for us in game. It just seems weird. Number 5, lack of Vanny. Vanny was a character that we all got excited for. She was at least alluded to in Help Wanted, and you know, that was a theory when it came to her involvement in this game. And we knew about Vanessa, and then through Special Delivery it was kind of hinted that Vanessa and Vanny may be one and the same, and that Vanessa was being manipulated or influenced by Afton into doing his bidding, revealing a darker side to her. This was also the theory for what would continue to happen in the game's security breach. And because of that, people thought that Vanessa and Vanny might be, you know, the main antagonist, or Vanny would be anyways, between those two personas. And even better, maybe this would actually be a villain we could actually save. Maybe we'd actually get a villain that gets redeemed. Oh my goodness. And then Security Breach came out, and Vanny didn't do very much. Even the Vanny specific ending that we get is honestly kind of disappointing. We don't even get a Vanny boss battle option really, at least not a playable one. Number 4, upgrading Glamrock Freddy. One of the most messed up things that you do in the game is definitely defeating Glamrock Freddy's friends and stealing their parts to upgrade him. Especially since you generally try to avoid talking to him about like where exactly you got the parts and how exactly that happened. And when you do mention it, you're kind of just like, oh yeah, that happened, don't worry about it. And when it does end up coming out sort of what did happen and where you got the parts, yeah, it's an awkward conversation to have. Glamrock Freddy also seems really hurt that you hurt his friends. Oh, and he's like, they're not in their right minds, they're just innocent victims. And then there is the whole weirdness of how detached Gregory seems to be in regards to his own emotions surrounding the destruction of these seemingly somewhat sentient animatronics. I mean, I feel like he's a little shocked, but he doesn't seem to be distraught at all. And I mean, I don't know if these animatronics, all of them, are specifically sentient, but based on our experiences with Glamrock Freddy, I think it's relatively safe for us to assume they are on some level, right? Number 3, demise of Roxy. I think one of the most messed up moments in this game is when you need to fight Roxy after you've in essence blinded her and like drastically messed her up. This really was the moment that made me question everything I thought I knew about this animatronic and her personality. Sure, Roxy seems self-centered and egotistical to begin with, but when you see just how devastated she is at the prospect of perhaps no longer being beautiful and being loved and accepted, oh man, that like hits you. It really shows you just how sad of a character this really is. It made me feel for Roxy, and it also made me feel horrible for everything being done to her. Like, I was thinking, dang, I don't want to see this animatronic hurt, but also that's how the game goes, so that's just like a thing that you have to have happen. You have to defeat her. You have to, in essence, kill her with fire. Or, you know, maybe not straight up kill her with fire, but at least stop her with fire. Number 2, it was Afton all along? The reveal that none of us were really hoping for, but I guess some part of us all was expecting to happen. I think the fact that William Afton was the villain behind Security Breach was not surprising, but at the same time, it was definitely something many of us were kind of hoping would not happen. Or I think even if you were like, oh, I want William Afton to come back, when it did happen, you were like, oh wait, maybe I never wanted that. Because like, why? I mean, William Afton is a horrifying villain, don't get me wrong, but he's also a very dead villain. A dead villain that we thought had been dead for a long time, and multiple times over. And yet here we are, with a villain that seems to keep coming back, no matter how dead he is. He's been spring-locked, returned as a restless, rotting corpse. He's been incinerated. He's been a ghost who haunted technology, getting uploaded into a game with his consciousness after he died, and now he seems to somehow be a charred husk looking for a new form. Cool, 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 great, love it. Number 1, sleepy time candy. Ugh, Moondrop, ugh. I don't really mind the energizing candy in this, the sun drop candy, although I do feel like that maybe is sus too, because caffeine and high levels of caffeine and giving that to kids. But the sleepy time candy, that you can give to kids? I really don't know about that. Moondrop is what we often name the nighttime persona of the daycare attendant. This attendant also has its own matching candy, which is named after it and known for helping kids sleep. Or does anyone sleep? Would this candy work on me? Is it not just for kids? There's something really creepy to me about a candy that involuntarily can make you pass out. There's something really creepy to me about a candy that makes you sleep at all, because, well, it could be used for nefarious purposes pretty easily. Honestly, this was probably one of the biggest things in the game that freaked me out, though the Moondrop persona of the daycare attendant in general is just really creepy. That and like when Moondrop is around, you get like the nighttime-y vibes. Oh, I don't like that either. That bothers me.
In at 10 to Rockstar Row. During the so-called interrogation and torture scene in Parts and Service, or at least that's what people are calling it, based on the titles of videos on YouTube, Vanessa questions Freddy about Gregory and accuses Freddy of helping us, which I mean is true, but she shouldn't even have to accuse him. More on that later. After telling him that she's gonna leave him down there until he can get put on a new endo, which doesn't really make sense if his coding is the issue and not the endoskeleton itself, why would she leave to Rockstar Row through Roxy's lift? Why? When she could have easily just come our way and head into the main atrium. That's where Gregory is for the majority of the game, and that's where all the animatronics are patrolling and have been spotting him. It would make more sense to go there than to Rockstar Row, where he was seen maybe twice at this point. Like, I don't know, it seems weird to me. I don't understand. Maybe like the whole logic behind this is that since all the animatronics are out in the atrium, she doesn't need to be there, or maybe she needs to be somewhere where she can get to her Vanny suit quickly, but I don't know. Even if it is Vanessa taking over and not like glitch trap at this point, I still don't get why she wouldn't just go to the atrium. In at 9, bag of rocks. Before Vanessa leaves Freddy in Parts and Service, okay, she says that it's so that his casing can be put on a new endo after they probably have someone on the clock who can do it normally. But then after that, she doesn't seem to be suspicious that he's walking around in front of her maybe within like 3 minutes. What? Who would have repaired him if not for, like, if it wasn't Gregory? There's literally no other human in the Pizzaplex, or at least that's alive at this point, and you know, Freddy can't really do it himself. The whole cylinder thing is to protect humans. There are no staff bots in this section, and the only reason that you had to leave him was because nobody else was working. Hello? You there, McFly? Like, why would Vanessa be so chill about Freddy just like walking around in front of her? She literally left him with his head removed, and now she's like, what, assuming that he somehow did it himself, which is literally impossible as he was strapped down. Even if he had done it himself, why wouldn't she see him and then confine him to his room, especially after just accusing him of helping to protect Gregory? Okay, it's something that confuses me like so much, and I found it weird in my first playthrough, so I figured that if we got close to Vanessa, she would pull us out of Freddy, but like, I walked up to her to test it and nothing. She gave absolutely zero shits. Like, why? She's dumber than a bag of rocks at this point. It would have been so easy just to make like that little modification to her code for at least this part of the game, like making her a little bit more dangerous if she saw Freddy, but no, they didn't. In at 8, Princess Quest. The whole reason Princess Quest is a thing in this game was to lock Vanessa away in her brain and prevent her from regaining full control over her body. So why did William create or allow for the creation of a fail-safe in this system that allows her to escape? I mean, like, sure, they didn't expect a kid to come along and figure it out maybe, but first of all, it's an arcade machine, of course I'm gonna goddamn play it, but also given the track record of literally all of your plans, you'd think that Afton would have smartened up after like 40 years at the very least, but he doesn't, okay? It's like having a self-destruct button on the bomb that you plan to use to blow up Gotham City, okay? Or like it's like, I don't get it. It's like if the Joker had a purify water supply button just on him or something, okay? It's dumb. If you want something to work, why give it a way to fail? Or maybe that's just my brain and my perfectionism talking, but again, it's one of the dumbest things that Afton has actually ever done in the series. Like, canonically it doesn't backfire somehow, but that's aside the point. Like, but seriously, why would you have a way to undo your evil plans? A 4-year-old can do this. The fact that this wasn't the canon ending is actually just insane how that didn't happen. Just bury the third machine, at least. God damn. Like, if that's the intention behind it, just bury it and leave it, okay? Fill it with concrete and leave it. Jeez. And at 7, stealing security badges. Not only is Gregory just a really weird kid in general who wears Fazbear merch but also doesn't know that Chica loves pizza, he's also a thief. This guy steals so many things from the Pizzaplex, not even including all the little gift boxes that you can find around that are only optional. He also steals the security badges and ends up getting enough to have level 7 clearance as like a 4-year-old or a 6-year-old or however old he is. Okay, it's really unclear. Because like he can't ride the go-kart alone and he can fit inside of Freddy's chest cavity, but he can also speak full sentences with proper grammar and stuff. Okay, I have no idea how old he actually is, but he is still able to gain level 7 clearance. But like, how are they so readily available for him to steal? And how is it that taking these badges always triggers some event that makes everything worse for him? Like, how are the security guards supposed to like use these badges if that's what happens every time they take it? Or, an even better question actually, how are these security badges laying around in special containers when security should just have their pass with their clearance level on it, like on their belt? Okay, I don't get it. Plus, how does gaining multiple level 1 passes end up adding up to a level 8 clearance? That's all, it's still all level 1, okay? I don't get it. It makes absolutely no sense, and it's almost as if they set it up for him to see how long it would play out or something, or how well he would do. I don't know. And at 6, fire. Okay, so during the true ending, otherwise known as the Afon ending or the Springtrap ending or whatever the hell you want to yell at me for not calling it ending, we have to fend off Springtrap's attempts to take control over Freddy by setting him on fire using what I'm guessing are the mechanisms that Henry uses to set the fire in FNAF 6, since this is the same location. However, it's incredibly convenient how we fall into the room that has all of this stuff in it, that it has the monitors set up connected to the cameras in the various rooms that Springtrap enters exclusively, with buttons that light the fires in the corresponding room that like has the camera on the monitor. Yeah, despite it being far more convenient for Henry to light all of them at the same time, I don't get how this works. Plus, I mean, like, if you think about it, how are these still working? It's clearly been a while, and some of the comments report that the Pizzaplex has been open for at least 4 years, which I don't know if it is accurate because, I mean, it's the YouTube comments. But if it is, these cameras and old-ass computers are still working 4 years after being set on fire that was enough to ruin the building. Not to mention also falling into a sinkhole that would have had to open up underneath it since we have to travel down an elevator to actually get into this section of the pizza place. How is all of this still working after all of that? And if you say that it was Vanny, that even adds more questions, like why make sure the fire systems are working and then they're set to being separate buttons? Plus, why have the computer monitors set up to look at the right area? I don't get it. And how are these these computer monitors are literal dinosaurs. How did they work before the fire, let alone after it? This is the kind of thing that demonstrates the line between luck and intent, because there was no way this many things lined up for him, excluding plot armor, because we kind of need to ignore protagonist syndrome for this entire list. But still, if this was just happening, that would not happen. Never. No way. Halfway through into number 5, Ice Cold Captive. Gregory in the Faster Blast ending actually orders the robots to disassemble Vanny since she just ordered them to disassemble Freddy. But like, disassembling a robot and a human are 2 very different things. Okay, trust me, I would know. I'm surprised the robots even listened to him. Adding on to that, the fact that Gregory is willing to kill Vanny here, it's pretty messed up, especially given that like most people assume that he's 10 or 11, which doesn't really seem to make sense. Either way, you could argue that he doesn't know any better, but clearly he does. Okay, this kid is able to destroy all 3 animatronics without a moment's hesitation, use their upgrades on Freddy, he's willing to kill Vanny despite seemingly knowing her like we see in the best ending, and then he burns Springtrap multiple times to make sure he doesn't take over Freddy. Okay, what the living hell is this kid doing? Like, how was he raised? How is he so nonchalant about literally doing all of this? This guy kills Vanny and then only gets emotional when he has to go talk to Freddy, who is destroyed. Dude, Vanny is bleeding out not 3 feet from you. She is torn to shreds and you're crying over a robot that can be fixed? Something isn't right about this kid. He's supposed to be the captive here, but he's the one putting everyone else in danger, I swear. And at 4, Recharge. What's the deal with airplane food and Glamrock Freddy and needing to recharge every 5 minutes, okay? Like, in the game sense, time isn't moving when I'm running around for 5 hours since I haven't actually progressed the story. So if this animatronic is supposed to need to recharge every hour only, why is this such an issue? And why does he only use power when we're actually piloting him like a mech? If this is the case, shouldn't this man also be losing power when we summon him to grab us from the 3rd basement floor? Like, what? Why not? And why does he need to recharge but seemingly all the other animatronics don't? I never see Chica, Roxy, or Monty in a recharge station. Okay, even if you are around when they should be, when the hour hits. Okay, it's stupid, it's confusing, and it doesn't make any sense. It's almost like Freddy is doing this to us on purpose, either because he thinks that it's funny, or maybe he really is working for Vanny, but needs to gain our trust and make excuses for why he can't be around us all the time, so that he can just go and give her the information, or why he can't just why we can't hide inside of him all night, okay? There's something fishy going on with this animatronic, and I swear in the next game we're going to figure out that he betrayed us off screen. Or at least in the DLC we're gonna figure that out. Getting close to the end, into number 3, destruction. And isn't it convenient that there is a way to break every other animatronic that isn't Freddy? Okay, that leaves the animatronic broken in such a way that we can remove whatever aspect we actually needed to upgrade Freddy? Hell yeah it is. It's so convenient, in fact, that there is somehow a way to break them that just works perfectly for their personality, and the perfect amount of the animatronics as well. That works the first time. And even with Chica, okay, we push her into a goddamn trash compactor and somehow don't get crushed ourselves despite her grabbing onto us and pulling us with her. We only get pulled down into another area of the Pizzaplex that we can still get back to the Pizzaplex through, and you know, we weren't pulled into a thing that crushed our skulls. So yeah, needless to say that looking at this logically, it makes absolutely zero sense that any of this actually happened. Okay, we didn't even need to crush the animatronics, and instead we could have just chilled in Freddy's room until 6 AM when the doors opened. And ultimately, in at number 2, staying until 6. Speaking of which, Glamrock Freddy straight up encourages Gregory to risk his life in order to get out of the Pizzaplex, when in all honesty, the safest thing to do would have just been to keep him in your stomach or in your green room until 6 AM, especially after the door closes and he was definitely stuck, which just, it makes no sense whatsoever if Freddy is really meant to be protecting Gregory. There was no need for the whole daycare secret escape hatch thing. You could have just gone back the way you came and everything would have been fine. You wouldn't have been suspicious since you would have at least appeared to be like you listened to Vanessa after you saw her in the healing area and went actually back to your room, and then Gregory would have been safe, especially after you knew that there was some crazy bunny running around the pizza place looking to slaughter him. So yeah, if Glamrock Freddy is supposed to be protecting him, he did a horrible job at protecting this kid, okay? I don't understand. You can think of all the excuses you want for him, but if Gregory had just waited in Freddy's green room, everything would have been fine. That's it. That's period. And finally, in at number 1, Probable Betrayal. I know that nobody wants to believe me on this, okay? We all want to hold out hope that finally one of the animatronics is going to be good and trying to help us, but Glamrock Freddy, after everything on this list, is almost certainly evil and just waiting for the perfect moment to strike. We've made a whole video about that, okay? And now, honestly, this one is kind of about that too. This guy makes some hella sketchy choices throughout our entire time at the Pizzaplex and only makes things worse for us. He takes us to get healed despite us saying no and having a limited time to leave, which ends up making us get locked inside the Pizzaplex. We also just sit in the booth and don't actually get healed, by the way, okay? He was unable to access the main Pizzaplex network despite having no reason to be disconnected, since at this point he wasn't suspected of helping us. And after Vanessa leaves Freddy without his head and parts in service, she sees him fully reassembled in less than 5 minutes and doesn't question it, like I said. Almost as if it was the plan the whole time. There's no way that he could have been put back together normally, and they just don't care, okay? The only way that this makes sense, any of this makes sense, is that if Freddy is secretly evil, and maybe even he doesn't know it. Maybe Afton is in the back of his mind just waiting to come forward.
Number 10, Backstage VHS Tape, Episode 1. After Tuesday night, you end up finding a VHS tape following your investigation that night. Of course, you watch it, because why wouldn't you watch it? I'm sure nothing bad can happen as a result of watching a videotape you randomly find, right? The ring? In the VHS tape, what you witness is Freddy carrying a disembodied arm down a hallway. At first it seems sweet and cute, but then later when you arrive at the door where I suppose Freddy was meant or intending to deliver said disembodied animatronic arm, things quickly become sinister. On the door is a note that reads, "Beware the Mangle." The light in the hallway then turns very red, and in shadow you can see the Mangle's face in silhouette, or what we assume is the Mangle's face anyways, over Freddy's, who looks up before the tape turns to static. What happens to Freddy next? We can only assume nothing good, as it looks like the Mangle was ready to devour something, maybe that arm, or maybe Freddy. I don't know. And friends, before we move on to the next spot, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Gaming, be sure to check out our newest channel, Most Amazing Top 10 Anime. Let's see how fast we can get to 100,000 subscribers! Number 9. People being possessed. One of the disturbing moments from this game comes right at the beginning when you are instructed on how to find out who is possessed. Who is possessed? I do not want to find out any of that. I don't even want people to be possessed, thank you very much. Never mind find out about it. Oh, that sounds horrifying. Possession is probably one of my biggest fears in all of life. I have always feared the idea of losing control of myself or of others around me losing control of themselves, being taken over by another entity who can make you do unspeakable or horrible things. Although, if we're trying to stop the possession, I guess that could be good. But that still means we have to confront it first, which, as I said, I'm not really here for that. Number 8. Watch out for haunted animatronics. So not only do we have to keep an eye out for animatronics that are possessed and mark them down in order to clear out the ghosts, but we will also at times need to call the animatronics who are getting damaged in to be repaired, which I guess over time they just, they become more damaged. I don't know. Sounds easy and harmless enough though. But also, of course, it actually isn't, because repairing animatronics, it's never safe in the world of FNAF, even in the fan-made world of FNAF, the extended FNAF verse if you will. One thing you are instructed to keep an eye out for right at the beginning is haunted animatronics that may report to you to be repaired when you call them. If they are haunted, you are instructed to not repair them. In fact, you shouldn't even be calling them. Just the thought of what may happen to you if you don't follow this rule is enough to send a shiver down my spine. I'm thinking the animatronic goes all haywire and crazy and then obviously attacks and ends you, which is obviously shown by a jump scare, but jump scares just allow me to imagine what else happens, and it can't be anything good, can it? Number 7. Crunch Crunch. Even at the start of the game, there was a moment where I felt particularly spooked. In the beginning, you meet your character, a man who seems to be staring at his hands, not knowing where he is or if he is alive. He laments that he feels empty, and as though he's being watched or stalked by some entity, some likely spooky entity. From seemingly behind or perhaps all around him, he hears a sound, a crunch crunch. Crunch. My brain immediately went to an animatronic munching on some unsuspecting victim, grinding them up inside themselves. What if someone like Chica the Chicken didn't just enjoy pizza and cupcakes, I wonder? What if an animatronic developed a taste for something else? A taste for human flesh? The other thing that adds to the scariness of this moment is that we see all this happen on a screen that seems to be lightly covered in what looks like blood splatter. Or I mean like the images, the images we see look like they're have blood splatter. But hey, maybe it's paint, maybe it's ketchup, who knows. Number 6. Paul Bear. Paul Bear is disturbing, and not just because of his appearance, but because his name also sounds like something a lot more morbid than what he appears to be. I feel like there is an indication in this game straight away that you may be just straight up dead, and this might all be like some weird hallucination when you first meet him. His name is Paul Bear, which might just sound like the harmless combination of the names Paul with, the animal bear, Paul Bear. But if you say them together as they are meant to be said, considering that there is no space or hyphen between them to denote any kind of pause or separation really, you are saying Paul Bear, which sounds quite similar to pallbearer. A pallbearer is a person at the funeral who's responsible for carrying out the coffin. Usually there are multiple pallbearers, as coffins with or without people inside tend to be like solid wood, so they're quite heavy. For us though, we only seem to get one pallbearer. Maybe we only need one because our body's already gone. Number 5. Inside an animatronic? At the beginning of the game, you wake up and are told you are in the Barren, a sort of limbo, a place between life and death. But the fact that there is a brain above you, if you look up there. Made me feel like we were either inside our own mind or perhaps inside the mind of an animatronic. You know what I mean? Especially as there is, like I said, a brain above you. It made me think that you are perhaps within an animatronic and that Paul Bear is the representation of a previous spirit that basically needed your help to move on so that they would not be stuck here. But instead, you would be stuck there in their place. Which, I don't know about you, but I feel like being stuck in between life and death is definitely a fate worse than death, at least in my opinion. So this creeps me out. Number 4, Looming Figures. Whoa. One of the immediate things I noticed in Juniors from the moment you wake up in the Baron is that there are figures looming on the edges of the dimly lit grassy area? The Paul Cave, I guess? That's one of the signs, if we want to call it that. They appeared to me to be clowns or like bears, similar to or more horrifying and older looking really than Paul Bear. Definitely at least bigger and far more menacing. What is their purpose? Why are they there? Well, at the beginning of the game you don't really know, which is what makes their presence even more horrifying and menacing in that moment. They also seem to be gathered in like a semicircle or a complete circle around you, as though they're waiting for your defenses to fully drop or for you to be left alone so they might all at once attack you and tear you to pieces. I don't like when it seems like figures are staring at me from the shadows, but they're just on like the edge of my field of vision. The thought of it just makes the hairs on my head stand up. When I was writing this, I could like feel my hairs just lifting slightly. Number 3, the whole office setup. Oh boy, this is a spooky office. Another terrifying element of this game is the office. It isn't so much a moment, I guess, as a place, I know, but still it's completely horrifying, and the first time you wake up there you're like, woo, this is spooky. Also, I just love like the graphics and the design in this game. It's realistic but also somewhat childish and toy-like in appearance. It's just got great animation and art in it, and I love it. But that doesn't make it any less spooky. In fact, maybe it makes it more spooky. In the office, you have an iPad or a smart tablet, if you will, with a bear themed cover wrapped around it, which you can click through for the cameras, and an old big box TV to watch said camera feeds on, which consistently flickers and looks like it's rated to the 80s or 90s or something like that. It looks old, in terms of the level of its tech anyways. The office is also covered in tons of creepy figures and statues, including a sneaky looking balloon boy and a bunch of creepy animatronic character masks. Yikes. Get me out of here. There's a lot of things going on in this office, and it's like everywhere you look you're like, that's creepy, that's scary, I don't want to look at this. Number 2, wrong guess jump scare. I kind of love Juniors because it's very much like a detective game, and in the case of you making incorrect guesses, everything can quickly go to shit here. Which I also love because it just feels very deduction-y. I like deduction games. As we discussed earlier, what you need to do is you need to watch the monitors carefully and keep an eye out for possession. Then you need to report that stuff. This can be denoted by flickering lights or handprints left behind by haunted animatronics, or later on the camera going all weird. However, if you pick the wrong animatronic when it comes to who you think may be possessed, you better watch out. They do not like being accused unless it's true, and they will jump scare you as a punishment. They're like, how dare you accuse me? I am not possessed. I'ma get you. Yikes. Also, these animatronic jump scares are horrifying, and you get to see some equally disturbing but fantastic artwork of the real haunted animatronic in detail after you are jump scared, which I both dread and love at the same time because it's like really pretty but also really creepy. Number 1, Marionette's music. The Marionette's music is loud and creepy, and it lets you know basically what room the marionette is in. Even though the marionette might not be an animatronic you suspected to be in this game at first, I actually love the design for the marionette here. The music in this game overall is just really creepy, but the marionette's music doubly so. If you hear the marionette music in a room and since she's haunted, then you want to guess the marionette. But remember, guessing incorrectly results in you being jump scared. Also, side note, the marionette might be one of the worst people to be jump scared by in this entire game. So while that might not be the one who jump scares you if obviously you misguess the marionette, just know that they are someone you do not want to end up on the wrong side of. If there is, if you misguess them, they would jump scare you. So while they might not be the one who jump scares you depending on, what you're guessing and if it's right, and all that stuff. Just know they are someone you do not want to end up on the wrong side of if there is a risk of them jump scaring you, because their jump scare I think is one of the worst in this game.
And 10 Cassidy. Assuming for this scenario that Cassidy is the one you should not have killed, which she's not, but you know what, for you guys. This is one of the dumbest things that William could have done. Or maybe he doesn't actually consider it a mistake, since the one you should not have killed after all is keeping him alive. They're doing it as a way to make him suffer though, so since it's potentially a mistake but could also be considered a good thing depending on the angle, I'm gonna go with number 10 for this one. But even if he does consider that a good thing, or if Cassidy doesn't end up being the one you should not have killed, which he's not, killing those 5 kids that made up the missing children's incident that included Cassidy was certainly a mistake, since it caused literally everything else in his life to go downhill. I mean, it was starting to go downhill, but it started going even worse, okay? And he does end up suffering extremely only because of that kill and the others, okay? So if you don't want to count Cassidy as the mistake, because she's not the one you should not have killed, which is still the case, I don't care what you guys say, I know. Count the missing children's incident itself as the mistake. In at 9, blueprints. There is no doubting what you've achieved on a technical level. These are clearly state of the art. There are just certain design choices that were made for these robots that we don't fully understand. We were hoping that you could shed some light on those. She can dance, she can sing, she's equipped with a built-in helium tank for inflating balloons right at her fingertips, she can take song requests, she can even dispense ice cream. With all due respect, those aren't the design choices we were curious about, Mr. Afton. This classic line of Afton being interrogated, I'm guessing, that plays the first time you open up Sister Location, just showcases how stupid this man is, okay? The cops know what these animatronics are capable of and what they were designed to do. And you want to know why? Because the blueprints are just readily available. This man included wireframes of a child being stuck in Funtime Freddy and just left it on his computer. What? Why would you do that? Well, that's so stupid. So when they found that, because you know obviously they're gonna search his computer, they instantly ended up being even more suspicious of him, and then they were keeping an even closer eye on him. That's also probably why he ends up starting to dress in the spring Bonnie suit even, maybe, which ultimately ends up screwing him over as well. So yeah, designing the Fun Times as killbots was definitely a bit of a mistake, but then leaving the wireframes on your computer was something even dumber, especially considering how one of them was meant to symbolize your dead wife, and the other one ended up killing your daughter. In at 8, Charlotte. While yes, Charlotte may have been Afton's first true kill, causing his descent into madness, this is more so because of what she really turns into. Because, like, somehow, this also didn't make Henry end Afton instantly, because if he had, I would understand that. But in the games, Charlotte ends up possessing the puppet, who then gives life to the other animatronics, which causes Afton to disassemble them and then release their spirits that then scare you into your Spring Bonnie suit that crushes you, and then you start going even crazier. But even discounting the game aspect of her, like, killing being a mistake, in both universes where William kills Charlotte, Henry comes after him for it, which results in what should be his death multiple times over. And not to mention how in the books specifically, unbeknownst to her, she is an animatronic robot that was meant to replace the daughter that Henry had lost, but it's also revealed that the animatronic is also, her adult form is also Baby as well, who can switch between her human and baby form at will, and then her human form doesn't remember being Baby. So yeah, Charlotte in the books also ends up being Baby, which is just a huge mistake for both Afton, Henry, and Scott Cawthon. And at 7, Henry. And while we did mention killing Charlotte, why didn't you off her dad after you realized that he knew everything? Like, why did you think that killing Charlotte would not have any consequences? Like, you killed your business partner's daughter. That's gonna be pretty obvious to him, especially when he already suspected you were up to something, hence the green bracelet that he gave her, since he was trying to take extra care to protect her and then she still died. I mean, he could have done more, but that's still a vengeful father if I've ever heard of one, okay? And he hasn't even needed vengeance at that point when he gave her the bracelet. So then, you know that he's gonna come after you, or at least seems like he will, so why didn't you kill him next? Killing Henry could have done wonders for your criminal career. I mean, yeah, the cops are already suspicious, but as long as they can't find a body, you're gonna be clear again. Like, yeah, or even if you're paying them off, you'll be fine. They won't put you away for 5 missing kids. They won't put you away for a missing father as well, especially a jury who has to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that you are the killer. And then without a body, there's no real forensic evidence. And again, they didn't put you away for missing kids, so, like, come on, just finally off Henry, and then you'd be able to stay as yourself or even Springtrap alive and then not get burned 3 separate times. Plus your son would be alive, so yeah. Well, Michael would be, not Crying Child. And at 6, Princess Quest. The whole reason Princess Quest is a thing in Security Breach was to lock Vanessa away and prevent her from regaining control of her own body, or at least all of it. So why did William create or allow for the creation of a sort of failsafe that allows her to escape? I mean, sure, they didn't expect some random kid to come along and figure it out, maybe, but given the track record of this series and Afton's life, you'd think that maybe he would have smartened up, at least after 40 fucking years. But, cause like, this is like having a self-destruct button on a bomb, or if the Flash has like a steal all my speed button that someone can just press, it's just stupid. Like, if you want something to work, why give it a way to fail? You know? Like, this is like probably one of the dumbest things that Afton has done. You know what, I think there are some dumber things, but depending on the way you look at it, it could have even been higher on this list. But seriously, like, what's the point to put a way to undo your evil plans? Like, it's one of the most ridiculous things in this story. And I get that we can save her and have a good ending, but that ending isn't even canon. So like, we could have done without it. It's stupid at this point. William has the brain capacity of a freaking toddler. Halfway through into number 5, Crying Child. I've had a ton of people complain to me about how Crying Child's death wasn't William's fault since he didn't put Crying Child in Fredbear's mouth and Michael did that, and then the spring locks failing was because he was crying. Mostly people were complaining about that on TikTok. However, to me, there is no logical way that an animatronic jaw would have crushed his skull. And you know what? Even not just to me. It should be to all of you as well. The spring locks, like, they weren't in use. They didn't have to keep the things to the side because it was in an animatronic mode. And even if it was, an animatronic jaw would require so much power to actually, like, accomplish the closing of that. So like, the only way that Crying Child's skull could have been crushed was if Afton had intentionally superpowered the jaw of Fredbear, which would make sense if he wanted to use it as a kill machine, or maybe even a backup kill suit, or maybe he was originally planning on using Fredbear, but then after his son got crushed in it, he was like, yeah, no, let's move on to Spring Bonnie, okay? This is just the worst way of going about it. There is no way that this was a Springlock failure. The Fredbear suit was already in animatronic mode, meaning that the springlock mechanisms, which are the things used to keep the robotic parts to the side, which are the things that would have failed, weren't being used. The springlock failure problem comes from when those mechanisms are put under stress of keeping the robotic bits away from the person inside the suit, and then they fail, and then that's when all the metal parts go back to where they were. So if it's in robot mode, the springlocks can't fail because they're already in use, okay? Keep in mind, again, the term for springlock in this context is referring to the parts that move the robotic bits away instead of the actual suit, which is also sometimes referred to as a springlock, but I'm talking about the actual bits that would have failed because they weren't in use. In at 4, Elizabeth. Speaking of mistakes, what about your daughter? I'm kidding, although we can't really be sure if she was intentional or not, but rather, I mean, what about getting your own kid killed? Like, I don't know how William thought that this was going to work out for him. I feel like this guy just thought, like, how do I capture kids more efficiently? Oh, I know, I can make a robot to lure them in, and then make sure that my kids love the design so that I know it will work. Hey, honey, come here, Dad wants your help designing this thing. Like, what? Because like, then Elizabeth ends up making the most predictable move ever and then going directly against her father's instructions to see the robot that is basically perfect in her eyes. Like, bro, like, William, why did you think that this was ever going to work out in your favor? Why did you think that this was going to just be all peachy? When has a kid ever listened to a parent, especially at seemingly what her age is, especially when they might be loaded because you have a successful entertainment business, okay? Spoiled rich kids listening to their dads when they say not to touch a giant robot made specifically to appeal to their generation? Yeah, great idea. You are a special kind of stupid. Just like, add a blacklist of kids not to take. Really. I mean, you have facial recognition tech in FNAF too. So come on, just set up a blacklist. Just do it. Listen to the Shia LaBeouf and just do it. Getting close to the end, at number 3, animatronics. Like, how the absolute living hell did he end up getting away with this? The smell of rotting bodies would also ruin the pizza place. The heat from the animatronics insides when they're actually like moving around would also speed up decomposition, and the animatronics are in front of people every single day. They even started complaining that the animatronics were leaking blood of mucus and it was smelling like death. If this was real life and William getting away wasn't important important for the plot. He should have been caught on that and that alone instantly. Oh, we never found the bodies of these kids, but now these animatronics are leaking blood and smell like death. Huh, that's not related. Oh, they even make like bone-crushing sounds when they move. And nah, we don't need to check these out. Or maybe we should. You know what? Fine, we'll take them in. Oh, look, we found the bodies of the missing kids. William Afton, you're under arrest. Like, boom. I don't see how this wasn't an open and shut case right away. Like, this was so goddamn stupid. They shouldn't have made it to the first game. His whole plan was a dumpster fire of bad ideas. And even if you think it was the puppet who put the bodies in the suits, why would they do that? Like, why would they hide the bodies? But ultimately, in at number 2, Springtrap. Being the brains behind some of the most advanced robotic technology in the universe, we'd expect a lot from William Afton. Like, maybe using the brain that made these. Or maybe that's asking too much. Because, I mean, he's the suit technician, but he's also the main killer who avoided the cops for how long? So, you know, he should really know what he's doing, right? Apparently not, since after discovering the original 5 animatronics were possessed, he disassembled them to learn their secrets, but inadvertently released the spirits of his original 5 victims. When seeing them, he ended up panicking, which is kind of reasonable in my eyes because, you know, they're freaking ghost kids, but also they're ghost kids that you killed. So, then this absolute animatronic genius, the technician that handles the suit maintenance and has explained to every employee the proper procedure for the spring-lock suits, including the spring bodysuit he uses to kill people, ends up climbing inside the suit in an attempt to make himself feel more powerful and scare away the ghost kids. However, dumbass didn't notice the moisture of the room, the leaking ceiling, and just his probably sweat, which caused the spring locks that were active in this moment since it was in suit mode to fail, which would have killed him, if only. And finally, in at number 1, the Platinum Rule. The biggest mistake that William has ever made, and I will stand by this until the day I die, was the fact that he killed people in his own establishment, okay? It's unknown if this was always his intention, or maybe if he planned to kill somewhere else and then just was like, now I'll do it here. But, like, come on, who the absolute hell thinks that this is a good idea? Who in the comments wants to justify killing your prime demographic for your business? Okay, dealers don't kill their best customers. It's bad for business. So why would William think that this is a good idea? Literally go anywhere else. This is basically just killing someone in your house. Okay, it's putting unwanted and unneeded scrutiny on everything you do. You even end up getting banned from going back while the investigation is underway. It didn't help your business either, okay? You had to close the first location, resulting in you opening another one that killed your daughter, and then you had to close that one and open up a new one, which ends up getting closed, and then you get locked in a room for 30 goddamn years, okay? This one mistake leads to literally everything else in the series. You don't do that. The Platinum Rule, we learned this from Barney Stinson. Don't crap where you eat, okay? If you just don't do it. And at 10, the Bite of 83. The Bite of 83 is the inciting moment to FNAF 4. It's the reason the whole game is happening. Not the reason for the series as a whole, mind you, but considering how the main gameplay of this game is us having nightmare fever coma dreams, this bite is definitely an important one. And while yes, it's certainly disturbing to see on screen in 8-bit, I think it would be even worse to see it as a VHS tape. The realism that we would get from even like crappy footage is so bone-shaking that you can actually like feel as if you're in the situation. This whole genre of found footage really coming from the Blair Witch Project and its incredible marketing strategy. Like, I had a whole unit on marketing like this in college, okay? It's absolutely genius. And if that sort of style of cinematography was used to make like a whole FNAF movie, or even maybe just a couple of clips, we would all be sent screaming. And watching a kid get his skull crushed by an overpowered animatronic is definitely a shocking moment already. Also, did you know that only 17% of people who watch these videos are actually subscribed? You may not actually know that you're not subscribed, so be sure you check it. And if you aren't and you've watched this channel multiple times, click the button, okay? It makes me feel better about myself. And at 9, spring locking. Along the same vein as the Bite of 83 tape scenario, a found footage video from one of the missing children's spirits' point of view would be absolutely insane. Just like Blair Witch, but make it FNAF, and that's in essence what the spring locking is. Plus, I would love to get these things in more angles, especially the moment where William starts suffering for like the next 30 plus years, okay? That would make me happy. This man has caused me so much suffering that I hope I get to see him suffer even more, okay? This wouldn't even be a scary VHS tape for me, okay? I'm sure the sound of the spring lock when it actually happens would spook me in the moment, but it would be quickly washed away by pleasure because this goddamn mother hubber would be suffering right there with me. And not like in a 50 Shades of I want people in pain kind of way, but more like seeing him suffer would make me smile, okay? I'm not gonna like hit up Chica afterwards or anything like that, but I'm definitely not gonna lose any sleep over it, you know? And at 8, March of the Toreadors. If you're confused by this number, don't worry, I'm going to explain it real quick. March of the Toreadors is the name of the song that plays when you run out of power in FNAF. It's the song that plays leading up to Freddy's Jumpscare. It's also slowed down for the games, and it's a song released by Georges Bizet, released in 1875, and from my understanding, now in the public domain. And while that's interesting, I mainly use the name to illustrate the part of the game that I'm talking about. Having a tape or a Blair Witch style video of you running out of power would be absolutely terrifying, okay? I can imagine it. And if it was made in a realistic way instead of being something like FNAF VR or otherwise with just like some filters thrown on top of it, if it was actually real, it would be terrifying. Okay, that's the kind of thing that would give people nightmares, and actual nightmares, not like the ones that I have where I just wake up panicking, then I'm like, oh wait, no, like actually scary. And it's 7, Midnight Motorist. While the gameplay of Midnight Motorist itself is pretty simple, the intrigue comes from the hidden lore that we get from this game, all of which is fairly well known to my knowledge. I'm pretty sure everyone knows it, actually. You know how it's called later that night in the files, and the secret area at the bottom that leads to the whole other section with the Mustard Man and whatnot? Okay, good, glad we're caught up. So, imagine that whole Mustard Man minigame section as a VHS tape. That would be pretty damn freaky, right? I mean, like, especially given the location and the fact that this is a house alone in a clearing in the woods, okay? Very Blair Witch Until Dawn kind of location there, alright? And even if you want to just use the gameplay of the minigame itself, that's still pretty terrifying. And you know what? Maybe even more so. I've said this multiple times, but the idea that anyone we pass on the street could have just walked away from a gruesome murder is something that is, I think, at least, is one of the scariest realities we all face. Like, I've made jokes like you're only alive because every human you've seen has chosen not to kill you, and in reality that has way more truth to it than you would think. And this VHS tape would be like any other. But considering how later that night is commonly seen as later in the night William killed Charlotte, I think the implications of it would be pretty horrifying. And at 6, security breach. All of it. Considering how there are cameras all over the Pizzaplex that we are able to tap into somehow using our Fazwatch, I think it's fairly safe to say that this would be a realistic idea. And honestly, I think all the security breach moments could work as a tape. I mean, like, come on, okay? Especially when Vanny distorts the camera around her and makes herself invisible to Freddy, okay? An invisible psycho bunny out for blood, chasing a kid around a giant Chuck E. Cheese mall for 6 hours? Tell me that doesn't already sound like a horror movie. Especially when you throw in like the low quality video that is associated with old security cameras and VHS tapes, okay? Slap on top of that some well-placed static at intense moments, and boom, you have yourself the next Paranormal Activity series. I just think that the concept of security breach as a whole would do well with this style of video. But if you want me to be more specific, give me a minute and I will be. Halfway through into number 5, finding Springtrap. Now, this is a moment that we actually didn't get to see, but the guys who opened Fazbear's Fright in FNAF 3, they found Springtrap in that back room, right? So why not have a tape of them actually finding the body? That would be some freaky shit, man. Especially considering how we know exactly what happens because of this discovery. The pathetic fallacy of these guys not knowing what they've done, but everyone watching knowing what this leads to, already creates a pretty damn compelling feeling. But then throw in the horror and the fact that we know it's William Afton Hartley clinging to life because he's stuck here until the one you should not have killed decides to let him go, and it just gets worse. But they also think that it's an animatronic that somehow just still works. So yeah, definitely something that would be an insane tape. Add to that the fact that we haven't actually seen this before, and I think we all love it. And at 4, Security Puppet. Another minigame from FNAF 6 that I think would make an incredible video, Security Puppet. And I mean like the whole finding Charlotte dead outside in the rain thing, not the whole do nothing until the final round because the green bracelet is stuck outside thing, okay? Because genuinely seeing this from the puppet's POV with like the green bracelet being highlighted and maybe even the only thing that is actually in color on the screen would make this so much more impactful, okay? The pain that the viewer would feel as we slowly crawl out to her bleeding body would be insane. And imagining like the sound effects of like faint screaming or like crying from Henry that we could also have in the background that gets slightly louder as we crawl, I'm actually getting chills right now. It doesn't even need to actually look realistic. You could do this in Source Filmmaker, and as long as the atmosphere is right and you have the sounds right and whatnot, it would be absolutely horrifying. Okay, I would hear those screams as I'm falling asleep, and I'd probably never be able to sleep again. Just saying. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, the Afton ending. Okay, well, if you don't want to have the whole security breach game be a VHS, okay, how about the canon ending, or the Afton ending as some call it. The canon ending to this game is some of the most insane luck that Gregory experiences in his whole time at the Pizzaplex. This sort of thing is like catnip for these types of videos. I mean, when have you like looked at one of these or like watched a found footage thing and thought, wow, this is so unlucky? Never. Okay, they always somehow end up having like lucky thing after lucky thing happen to them. So let's take us falling into the room and then fighting off these robots. Just make it a damn VHS tape. Since honestly, trying to do the whole of Security Breach may be a little more ambitious than most people could reasonably expect, but that's just kind of the person I am, though. I end up thinking of cool things after cool things, so then I add them to the project, and then it inevitably becomes too ambitious that now it seems like a mountain I have to climb, so I give up. But then I also don't want to make the mountain smaller because all of these things would be so cool and I've already thought about them and want to include them. So yeah, it's happened with literally every project that I've had in mind, and it sucks. So how about this one, we just cut it down to the Afton ending. Is that better for anyone who can actually animate and do it properly? I hope so. Penultimately, in at number 2, the Claw. Elizabeth Afton getting grabbed by Baby is one of the most terrifying moments in the series. Possibly because Crying Child might have seen it, which would explain the mouths on the Nightmare Animatronic stomachs. However, if we were to see a tape of this moment from Crying Child's perspective, whether that detail be canon or not, oh my freaking god, that would be so utterly terrifying that we may actually, like, I might actually freeze, okay? I don't know how to explain why a kid hiding in the bushes while his sister is grabbed by an animatronic claw while trying to get ice cream would be so shocking and horrible, except for how I just did it. But like, especially considering that this kid ends up turning into an absolute psychopath after this, and by that I mean Elizabeth, not Crying Child, but like, still, okay? The found footage that's like of someone hiding for some reason is always scarier than someone who's in the middle of the action, because I feel like it's, if you're hiding, you can point the camera at the scene, but if you're filming it and you're in the action, you're just filming your feet as you run away, because you know you're focused on running away, not filming it. Plus, like, in general, this is just a f***ed up thing to watch happen, be it in person or on video. And finally, in at number 1, scoopening. Okay, now, I know that you may be mad and may think that this is a stupid point, but hear me out, okay? The scooper may seem like a weird but normal thing, at least by FNAF standards at first, but like with the blueprint revealing how this thing actually works, seeing this in third person from found footage would be absolutely atrocious. This thing can inject whatever it ends up scooping with Remnant, which is a molten metal possessed by souls, and it keeps a person alive after removing their insides, replacing it with robot parts, and then having those robot parts leave that body. In essence, just making that person a walking case of flesh. Do you really want to watch that happen from a security camera? Or even just watch it happen to someone else, okay? No. In Sister Location, we see it in first person, okay? All we see is just basically like a mighty machine digging into our body. But like from the outside looking at Michael, we would see so much more. And if it's from Ennard's perspective, it would only be worse.